Tom Jarriel continues now with his investigation into the Church of Scientology. Is it a religion like other mainstream religions, or is it, as critics charge, a secretive and destructive cult? We go back now to 1975. Scientology and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, are already being investigated around the world. And after years of self-imposed exile aboard his ship, the Apollo, Hubbard has decided to drop anchor in the United States.
After wandering the seas for more than 5 years, Hubbard finally came ashore here in the sleepy retirement town of Clearwater, Florida. His goal was to establish an international mecca for Scientology. But according to many insiders, Hubbard was growing more and more vindictive toward those who stood in his way. He created what he called the Rehabilitation Project Force.
The people who are assigned to this camp are the worst of the worst. They're criminals in Scientology.
Hannah Whitfield says the RPF was, in effect, a work camp to rehabilitate Sea Org members accused of insubordination. In May 1978, she says, it was her turn.
I had two big men on either side of me who pretty much manhandled me into this room with no windows, and there was just a mattress on the floor. And I was locked in this room in the dark for however long it was.
Whitfield says that while she was in the RPF, she lived in the garage of the church-owned Fort Harrison Hotel, ate scraps, and worked at hard labor up to 12 hours a day.
What was your crime to have been put into this harsh program to begin with?
My crime was, in a Scientology sense, a very serious one. I was accused of having negative thoughts about Mr. Hubbard.
The Rehabilitation Project Force is a part within the Sea organization where people who have, been goofing up, they can go rehabilitate themselves.
After our interview, the church apparently launched a letter-writing campaign. Linda sent us scores of letters from current and former Sea Org members, all addressed to ABC, and all extolling the benefits of the RPF. While on the RPF, I learned how to work hard and be a productive person. I came out of it extroverted, ethical, and more willing to confront life. What I handled was getting to the root of why I was so bad in my transgressions against others.
But some former members we talked to described their experience as physically and psychologically punishing, and anything but voluntary.
I was certainly completely at their mercy.
Dennis Ehrlich claims that for one 10-day period, he was actually put under lock and key in the boiler room of the Fort Harrison Hotel.
In the middle of one of the rooms was a chicken wire enclosure with a door that had a lock on it, and I was placed in there, and the lock was put on the door.
At the time, Vaughn and Stacy Young were high-level public relations officials in the church.
At 4 in the morning, one night, Vaughn and I were asleep, and there was a knock on the door, and 2 security guards were there, and they took me away into the prison camp.
Stacy Young says she was assigned to the RPF for disobeying an order to interrogate a fellow staff member. For part of the time, Young says she was in a room on the 7th floor of the Los Angeles church. Her husband admits he stood by and did nothing to try to get her out.
You're being challenged that, what are you? Are you disloyal? Do you love your wife more than freedom for the planet? You're going to let people suffer? All this crap is dumped on you. What are you supposed to say?
I didn't see Vaughn for several months. I didn't hear from him. I didn't have any correspondence with him whatsoever. He did nothing to try and rescue me. I felt that my husband should have rescued me.
I didn't take her out. I look back at that. I should have just picked her up. I should have just picked her up, and I should have just said, if anybody touches me, you're dead.
Even after Stacy's release from the RPF, the Youngs remained loyal. But in 1988, Vaughn Young says, the church turned on him too, and he began his own 13-month stint in the RPF.
You go through interrogations, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month, breaking you down, breaking you down, breaking you down.
Travel between buildings as accompanied by a security guard. An RPF member may not speak unless spoken to. If dismissed, must sign a confession of his crimes. These are acceptable, I take it.
If a priest or a monk or a nun was to leave one of those religious orders and come out and say, wow, you know, I had to sleep on straw and I lived in a cell and I couldn't talk to anybody and I had to be celibate, and people would go, but you walked in there knowing that and you were a part of it, so fine that you leave. Don't complain about it.
A year after Vaughn's release from the RPF, the young say they had had enough. They threw some clothes in the back of their car and fled.
Hubbard's policy was, as long as you're with us, we'll leave you alone. But if you speak out against us, we're going to dog you and ruin you and destroy you. And that's exactly what they keep trying to do.
The church denies having mistreated the Youngs. They provided 2020 with these documents, in which both of the Youngs write fondly of their experience in the RPF. Vaughn Young says they were coerced.
They want it in your own handwriting, so that when your handwriting is down, it says, see, we have it in his handwriting. He confessed to this. He did this.
Vaughn Young says he was forced to sign a statement he did not believe in, and it was a prerequisite to get out of what he wanted to get away from.
Well, you know, what do you want to believe? Do you want to believe what Vaughn Young wrote at the time and signed, or do you want to believe him now saying, well, I didn't mean to write that?
Many of their stories, though, about RPF are corroborated in sworn court testimony by up to a dozen other people. Are they all lying?
They sat in a room. They figured out what they were going to say. They wrote their bits. They passed them around. They made sure that they were consistent. And, yes, they were paid for that.
Rinder provided 2020 with this court document, which shows that the Youngs, since 1993, have been paid some $50,000 as expert witnesses in civil suits against the church. But the Youngs, who have separated since our interview, vehemently deny that they are fabricating their stories. In fact, they point out, similar accounts have been credited by judges and juries in a number of court cases. In one example, former Sea Org member Lawrence Wollersheim won a multi-million-dollar judgment against the church. An appeals court judge wrote that while in the RPF, Wollersheim had been forced to undergo a strenuous regime that lasted 19 hours a day. When he tried to escape the RPF, the judge wrote, several Scientology members seized Wollersheim and held him captive.
They censor the phone calls. You're not allowed to speak to anyone who's critical. There was no way for anyone to reach me.
Scientology has projected a kinder, gentler, more understanding image in recent years. But critics insist that RPF camps continue to exist today. Sworn affidavits point to one at this site, a multi-acre spread near Palm Springs, which the church calls the Castile Canyon School.
What is the Castile Canyon School?
It's a school for the children of Sea Org members.
We have seen sworn statements this also is an RPF camp. Is that true?
There are RPF people there, yeah.
ABC asked Mike Rinder if we could take our cameras and go to the school to talk to those inside, but he refused.
With a helicopter.
Earlier, when German filmmaker Peter Reichelt and his crew set out to see what they could find, this is what happened.
You're blocking us. You're arresting us. You are not allowed to do that.
A mile from the school, the Germans' way was blocked by carloads of Scientologists. According to the German filmmakers, senior church official Ken Hoden detained them for more than 2 hours.
I'm giving you one last warning. Are you going to leave, yes or no? Fine! I'm placing you under citizen's arrest right now.
What's so secret with this organization? What's so secret with this area? What happened here?
What is all the secrecy about? What else goes on behind the walls of church compounds? Tom Jarriel will have more in a moment.